rushing out and you were empty-handed, filled with the regrets.
I think this is where we left off. Chapter 4. Gillian Boardman was a competent nurse, and her hobby was men. She went on duty that day as supervisor of the floor where Smith was. When the grapevine said the patient was in Suite K-12, he had never seen a woman in his life. She did not believe it. She went to pay call on this strange patient. She knew the no female visitors rule. While she did not consider herself to be a visitor, she sailed past without attempting to use the guarded door. Marines had a stuffy habit of construing orders literally. Instead, she went into adjacent watchroom. Dr. Thaddeus looked up. "Well, if it ain't Dimples. Hi, honey, what brings you here?" "This is part of my rounds. What about your patient?" "Don't worry your head, honey. He's not your responsibility. See your order book." "I read it. I want to look at him." "In one word, no." "Oh, Tad, don't go regulation." He gazed at his nails. "If I let you put foot inside that door, I'd wind up in Antarctica. I wouldn't want Dr. Nelson to even catch you in this watchroom." She stood up. "Is Dr. Nelson likely to pop in?" "Not unless I send for him. He's sleeping off in low G." "That's what the idea of being so duty-struck?" "That's all, nurse." "Very well, doctor," she added, "Steaker." "Jill, a stuffed shirt, too." He sighed. "Still okay for Saturday?" She shrugged. "I suppose. A girl can't be fussy these days." She went back to her station, picked up the pass key. She was balked but not beaten. A Suite K-12 had a door joining to it by the room beyond. A room used as a sitting room, and the suite was occupied by the high official. The room was not then in use. She let herself into it. The guards paid no attention, unaware that they had been flanked. She hesitated at the door between the two rooms, feeling the excitement that she used to feel sneaking out of student nurses' quarters. She unlocked it and looked in. The patient was in bed. He looked at her as the door opened. Her first impression was, here was a patient too far gone to care. His lack of expression seemed to show the apathy of the desperately ill. And then she saw that his eyes were alive with interest. She wondered, is his face paralyzed? She assumed her professional manner. "Well, how are we today? Feeling better?" Smith translated the questions. The inclusion of both them inquiry was confusing. He decided it might symbolize a wish to cherish and grow close. The second matched Nelson's speech forms. "Yes," he answered. Good. Aside from his odd lack of expression, she saw nothing strange about him, and if women were unknown to him, he was managing to conceal it. "Was there anything I can do?" She noted that there was no glass on the bedside shelf. "May I get you water?" Smith had spotted at once that this creature was different from the others. He compared what he was seeing with pictures Nelson had shown him on the trip home to his place. Pictures intended to explain a puzzling configuration of this people group. This, then, was woman. He felt both oddly excited and disappointed. He suppressed both in order that he might grok feebly with such success that Dr. Thaddeus noticed no change in the dials next door. But when he translated the last query, he felt such surge of emotion that he almost let his heartbeat increase. He caught it and chided himself for an undisciplined nestling. Then he checked his translation. No, he was mistaken. This woman creature had offered him water. It wished to grow closer. With great effort, scrambling for adequate meanings, he attempted to answer with due ceremoniousness. "I thank you for the water. May you always drink deep." Nurse Boardman looked startled. "Why, how sweet." She found a glass, filled it, handed it to him. He said, "You drink." "Wonder if he thinks I'm trying to poison him," she asked herself. But there was a compelling chord to his request. She took a sip, whereupon he also took one, after which he seemed content to sink back in, as if he had accomplished something important. Jill told herself that as an adventure this was a fizzle. She said, "Well, if you don't need anything, I must get on with my work." She stopped for the door. He called out, "No." She stopped. "Don't go away." "Well, I have to go pretty quickly." She came back. "Is there anything that you want?" He looked down. He looked her up and down. "You are woman?" The question startled Jill Boardman. Her impulse was to answer flippantly, but Smith's grave face and oddly disturbing eyes checked her. She became aware emotionally that the impossible fact about this patient was true. He did not know what a woman was. She answered carefully, "Yes, I am woman." Smith continued to stare. Jill began to be embarrassed. To be looked at by a male she expected, but this was like being examined under a microscope. She stirred. "Well, I look like a woman, don't I?" "I do not know," Smith answered slowly. "How does one look? What makes you woman?" "Well, for pity's sake." This conversation was further out of hand than any she had had with males since her 12th birthday. "You don't expect me to take off my clothes and show you." Smith took time to examine the symbols and try to translate them. The first group he could not grok at all. It might be one of those formal sounds that people use, yet it had been before spoken with force, as if it might be last communication. Perhaps he had so deeply mistaken right before withdrawal. Perhaps he had been so deeply mistaken, right to conduct in dealing with a woman creature, that it might be ready to discorporate. He did not want a woman to die at the moment, even though it was right and possibly its obligation. The abrupt change from a report of the water ritual to a situation in which a newly won water brother might be considering withdrawal or discorporation would have to be thrown him into a panic. He had not been consciously suppressing such disturbance. But he decided that if he died now, he must die at once. Also, he could not grok it any otherwise, not after giving of water. The second half contained symbols he had encountered before. He grokked them perfectly, the intention, but there seemed to be a way to avoid his crisis, by acceding to the suggested wish. Perhaps if the woman took his clothes off, neither of them need discorporate. He smiled happily. "Please." Jill opened her mouth and closed it. She opened again. "Well, I'll be darned." Smith could grok emotional violence and knew that he had offered a wrong reply. He began to compose his mind for discorporation, savoring and cherishing all that had been seen, with a special attention to this woman creature. Then he became aware that the woman was bending over him, and he knew somehow it was not about to die. It looked into his face. "Correct me if I'm wrong, but were you asking me to take my clothes off?" The inversions and abstractions required careful translation, but Smith managed it. "Yes," he answered, hoping that it would not stir up a new crisis. "That's what I thought you said. Brother, you aren't ill." The word brother he considered first. The woman was reminding him that he had been joined in water. He asked the help of his nestlings, that he might measure up to whatever the new brother wanted. "I am not ill," he agreed. "Though I'm darned if I don't know what's wrong with you. I won't peel down, and I've got to leave." It straightened up and tunneled down towards the siz's door, then stopped and looked back with a quizzical smile. "You might ask me again, real pettily, under other circumstances. I'm curious to see what I might do." The woman was gone. Smith relaxed and let the room fade away. He felt sober triumph that he had somehow comforted himself so that it was not necessary for them to die, but there was so much more to grok. The woman's last speech had contained new symbols to him, which were not new and had been arranged in fashions not easily understood, but he was happy that the favor had been suitable for communication between water brothers, although touched with something disturbingly and terrifyingly pleasant. He thought about his new brother, the woman creature, and felt odd tingles. The feeling reminded him of the first time he'd been allowed to present a discorporation, and he felt how happy without knowing why. He wished that his brother, Dr. Malmid, were here. There was so much to grok, so little to grok from. Jill spent the rest of her watch in a daze. The face of the man from Mars stayed in her mind, and she mulled over the crazy things she said. No, not crazy. She had done her stint in psychiatric wards and felt certain that this remarks had not been psychotic. She decided innocent was the term, then decided that the word was not adequate. His expressions was innocent, his eyes were not. What sort of creature had a face like that? She had once worked in a Catholic hospital. She suddenly saw the face of a man from Mars surrounded by the headdresses of a nursing sister and nun. The idea disturbed her, but there was nothing female about Smith's face. She was changing into street clothes when the nurse struck her head into the locker room. Phone, Jill. Jill accepted the call. Sound without vision. While she dressed. Is this Florence Nightingale? A baritone voice asked. Speaking. That you, Ben? Stalwart upholder of freedom, of the press in person. Little one, are you busy? What do you have in mind? I have in mind buying you a steak, plying you with liquor, and asking you a question. The answer is still no. Not that question. Oh, you know another one? Tell me. Later, I want you softened up first. Real steak, not Syntho? Guaranteed. Stick a fork in it, and it will move. You must be on an expense account, Ben. That's irrelevant and ignoble. How about it? You talked me into it. Roof on the medical center, 10 minutes. She put the suit she had changed into back into her locker, barely translucent with the bustle. Mia's getting into something, hold on. Put on the suit she had changed into, back into her locker, and put on a dress she kept there for emergencies. It was demure, barely translucent, with the bustle and bust pads so subdued that merely recreated the effect she had produced wearing nothing. Jill looked at herself with satisfaction and took the balance tube up to the roof. She was looking for Ben Caxton, and when the roof orderly touched her arm. There's a car paging you, Miss Boardman. That Talbot saloon. Thanks, Jack. She saw the taxi spotted for takeoff, with its door open. She climbed in and was about to hand Ben a backhanded compliment when she saw that he was not inside. The taxi was on automatic, its door closed, and it took to the air, swung out of the circle, and sliced across the Potomac. It stopped on a landing flat over Alexandria, and Caxton got in. It took off again, and Jill looked him over. Why aren't we important? Since when do you send a robot to pick up your women? He patted her knee and gently said, Reasons, little one. I can't be seen picking you up. Well, and you can't afford to be seen with me, so simmer down. It isn't necessary. Which one of us has leprosy? Both of us, Jill. I'm a newspaperman. I was beginning to think you were something else. And you're a nurse at the hospital where they are holding the man from Mars. Does that make me unfit to meet your mother? Do you need a map, Jill? There are more than 1,000 reporters in this area, plus press agents, axe grinders, Winchills, Lipmans, and Stampede that arrived with the champion landed. Every one of them has been trying to interview the man from Mars, and none has succeeded. Do you think it would be smart for us to be seen leaving the hospital together? I don't see that it matters. I'm not the man from Mars. He looked her over. You certainly aren't. But you are going to help me see him, which is why I didn't pick you up. Huh? Ben, you've been out there in the sun without your hat. They've got a migraine guard around him. So they have. So we talk it over. I don't see what there is to talk about. Later. Let's eat. Now you sound rational. Would your expense account run to the new Mayflower? You are on an expense account, aren't you? Craxton frowned. Jill, I wouldn't risk a restaurant closer than Louisville. It would take this hag 2 hours to get that far. How about dinner in my apartment? Said the spider to the fly. Ben, I'm too tired to wrestle. Nobody asked you to. King's X crossed my heart and hope to die. I don't like that much better. If I'm safe with you, I must be slipping. Well, all right, King's X. Craxton punched the buttons. The taxi, which had been circling under a hold instruction, woke up and headed for the apartment hotel where Ben lived. He punched a phone number and said to Jill, How much time do you want to get liquored up, Sugarfoot? I'll tell the kitchen to have the steaks ready. Jill considered it. Ben, your mousetrap has a private kitchen. Of sorts. I can grill a steak. I'll grill the steak. Hand me the phone. She gave orders, stopping to make sure that Ben liked endive. The taxi dropped them on the roof when they went down to his flat. It was old-fashioned, Its one luxury, a live grass lawn in the living room. Jill stopped, slipped off her shoes, stepped barefoot into the living room, and wiggled her toes among the cool green blades. She sighed. My, that feels good. My feet have ever hurt ever since I entered training. Sit down. No, I want my feet to remember this tomorrow. Suit yourself. He went to his pantry and mixed drinks. Presently she followed and became domestic. Steak was in the package lift. It was where pre-baked potatoes. With it were pre-baked potatoes. She tossed the salad. Handed it over to the refrigerator, set up combination to grill the steak, and heat the potatoes. But not start the cycle. Ben, doesn't this stove have remote control? He studied the setup, flipped a switch. Jill, what would you do if you had to cook over an open fire? I do darn well. I was a good scout. How about you, Smarty? They went to the living room. Jill sat at his feet, and they applied themselves to martinis. Opposite his chair was a stereo. Vision tank disguised as an aquarium. He switched it on. Guppies and tetras gave way to the face of well-known Winchell Augustus Greaves. It can be stated authoritatively, the image was saying, that man from Mars is being kept under drugs to keep him from disclosing the facts. The administration would find it extremely. Caxton flipped it off. Gus, old boy, he said pleasantly, you don't know a darn thing more than I do, he frowned. Though you might be right about the government keeping him under drugs. No, they aren't, Jill said suddenly. How's that, little one? The man from Mars isn't under hypnotics. Having blurted more than she meant to, he added, he's got a doctor and a continuous watch, but there aren't any orders for sedation. Are you sure? You aren't one of his nurses? No, as a matter of fact, there's an order to keep women away from him. And there's some tough Marines to make sure of it. So I heard. The fact is you don't know whether they are drugging him or not. Jill better let. She would like to tell on herself on back up what she had said. Ben, you wouldn't give me away. How? Any way at all. That covers a lot, but I'd go along. All right, pour me another. He did, so Jill went on. I know they don't have the man from Mars hopped up because I talked with him. Craxton whistled. I knew it. When I got up this morning, I said to myself, go see Jill. She's the ace up the sleeve. Honey lamb, have another drink. Have 6. Here, take the pitcher. Not so fast. Whatever you like. May you rub your poor tired feet? Lady, were you about to be interviewed? How? No, Ben, you promised. You quote me and I'll lose my job. How about from a usually reliable source? I'd be scared. Or you gonna let me die of frustration and eat that steak by yourself? Well, I'll talk, but you can't use it. Ben kept quiet, and Jill described how she had outflanked the guards. Say, could you do that again? I suppose so, but I won't. It's risky. Well, could you slip me in that way? Look, I'll dress up like an electrician, coveralls, union badge, toolkit. You'll slip me the key, and no. Look, baby girl, be reasonable. This is the greatest human interest story since Columbo, Conde Isabella, and Hawking or Jules. The only thing that worries me is that I may find another electrician. The only thing that worries me, Joe interrupted, is the story. To me, it's my career. And they take away my cat, my pen, and ride me out of town on a rail. And there's that. There sure is that. Lady, you're about to be offered a bribe. How big? It'll take quite a chunk to keep me in style for the rest of my life in Rio. Well, you can't expect me to outbid Associated Press or Reuters. How about 100? What do you think I am? We settled that. We're dickering over the price. 150? Look up the number of Associated Press. That's a lamb. Capital 10 9000. Jill, will you marry me? That's as high as I can go. She looked startled. What will you say? Will you marry me? Then when they ride you out of town on a rail, I'll be waiting at the city line and take you away from your sordid existence. You'll come back here and cool your toes in my grass, our grass, and forget your ignominy. But you darn well got to sneak me into that room first. Then you almost sound serious. If I found a phone for a fair witness, will you repeat that? Craxton sighed. Send for a witness. She stood up. Ben, I won't hold you to it. She kissed him. Don't joke about marriage to a spinster. I wasn't joking. I wonder. Wipe the lipstick, and I'll tell everything I know when I consider how you can use it without getting me ridden on that rail. Fair enough? Fair enough. She gave him a detailed account. I'm sure he wasn't drugged. I'm equally sure that he was rational, although he talked in the oddest fashion and asked the darndest questions. He would be odder still if he hadn't talked oddly. Jill, we don't know much about Mars, but we do know that Martians are not human. Suppose you were popped into a tribe so far back in the jungle that they had never seen shoes. Would you know the small talk that comes from a lifetime in culture? That's a mild analogy. The truth is that at least 40 million miles stranger. Jill nodded. I figured that out. That's why I discounted it as odd remarks. I'm not dumb. No, you're real bright for a female. Would you like this martini in your hair? I apologize. Women are smarter than men. That is proved by our whole setup. Gimme, I'll fill it. She accepted the peace offerings and went on. Ben, that order about letting him see women, it's silly. He's no sex fiend. No doubt they don't want him to hand too many shocks at once. He wasn't shocked, he was just interested. It wasn't like having a man look at me. If you had granted that request for reviewing, you might have had your hands full. I don't think so. I suppose they told him about a male and female. He just wanted to see how women are different. Viva la difference, Craxton answered enthusiastically. Don't be vulgar. Mia was being reverent. I was giving thanks that I was being more human, not Martian. Be serious. I was never more serious. Then be quiet. He wouldn't give me any more trouble. You didn't see his face, I did. What about his face? Jill looked puzzled. Have you ever seen an angel? You cherub, otherwise not. Well, neither have I, but that is how he looked. He had old, wise eyes and a completely placid face, a face of unearthly innocence. Unearthly is the word, Ben answered slowly. I'd like to see him. Ben, why are they keeping him shut up? He wouldn't hurt a fly. Caxton fit his fingertips together. Well, they want to protect him. He grew up in Mars gravity. He's probably weak as a cat. But muscular weakness isn't dangerous. Myasthenia gravis is much more worse, and we manage all right with that. They want to keep him from catching things, too. He's like those experimental animals at Notre Dame. He's never been exposed. Sure, no antibodies. But from what I hear, around half the mess hall, Dr. Nelson, the surgeon and the champion, took care of that on the trip back. Mutual transfusions until he had replaced about half of his blood tissue. Can I use that, Jill? That's news. Just don't quote me. They gave him shots for everything but housemaid's knee. Ben, to protect him from infection doesn't take armed guards. Jill, I've picked up a few tidbits you may not know. I can use them because I've got to protect my sources, but I'll tell you, just don't talk. I won't. It's a long story. Want a refill? No, let's start the steak. Where's the button? Right here. We'll push it. You offered to cook dinner. I will lie here and starve before I get up to push a button 6 inches from your finger. As you wish. Don't forget who cooked dinner. Now, about Valentine Michael Smith, there is grave doubt that he has right to the name Smith. And your pal's first interplanetary bastard of record. The hell you say? Please be ladylike. You remember anything about the young boy? 4 married couples, 2 couples were captain, and Ms. Brandt, Dr. Smith, your friend with the face of an angel, is the son of Miss Smith and Captain Brandt. How do they know? And who cares? It's pretty sniveling to dig up a scandal after all this time. They're dead, let them alone. As to how they know, there probably never were 8 people more thoroughly measured and typed. Blood typing, RH factor, hair, eye color, all those genetic things, you know, more about than I do. It is certain that Mary J. Miles Smith was his mother and Michael Brand his father. They give Smith a fine heredity. His father had an IQ of 163, his mother 170, and both were tops in their fields. As to who cares, Ben went on, a lot of people care, and more will. Once this shapes up, Ever heard of the Lyle Drive? Of course, that's what the champion used. And every spaceship these days. Who invented it? I don't. Wait a minute. You mean she? Hand the lady a cigar, Dr. Mary Jane Lyle Smith. She had it worked out before she left, even though development remained to be done. So she applied for basic patents and placed it in trust, not a non-profit corporation, mind you. Then assigned control and interim income to the Science Foundation, so eventually the government got control, but your friend owns it. It's worth millions, maybe hundreds of millions, I couldn't guess. They bought dinner. Caxton used ceiling tables to protect his lawn. He lowered one to his chair and another to Japanese hide so that Jill could sit on the grass. Tender? He asked. Ungrateful, she answered. Thanks, remember, I cooked. Ben said after swallowing, how about Smith being, illegitimate? Can he inherit? He's not illegitimate. Dr. Mary Jane was at Berkeley, California. Laws deny the concept of bastardry. Same for Captain Brandt. As New Zealand and civilized laws. While in home and state of Dr. Ward Smith, Mary Jane's husband, a child born in wedlock and legitimate, come hell or high water. We have here Jill, a man who is the legitimate child of free parents. No, wait, Ben, he can't be. I'm not a lawyer, but you sure ain't. Such fictions don't bother a lawyer, such as legitimate. Different ways in different jurisdictions. Even though a bastard in fact, so she inherits. Besides that, while his mother was wealthy, his fathers were well-to-do. Brandt plowed through most of his scandalous salary as pilot on the moon, running to Lunar Enterprises. You know, the stuff boomed, they just declared another stock dividend. Brandt had one vice, gambling, but the bloke regularly invested in that too. Ward Smith had family money. Smith is heir to both. That ain't half, honey. Smith is heir to the entire crew. All 8 signed a gentleman's adventures contract, making them mutually heir to each other, and all of them, and their issue. They did it with care, using as models contracts in the 16th and 17th centuries that had stood up against every effort to break them. These were high-powered people. Among them had quite a lot. Happened to include considerable Lunar Enterprises stock too. Besides what Brandt held, Smith might just own a controlling interest, or at least a key block. Smith might own. Jill thought about childlike creature who had made such a touching ceremony of a drink of water and felt sorry for him. Craxton went on, I wish you could sneak a look at Envoy's log. They recovered it, but I doubt they'll release it. Why not, Ben? It's a nasty story. I got much of it from my informant sobered up. Dr. Ward Smith delivered his wife by cesarean section, and she died on the table. What he did next was that he knew the score. With the same scalpel, he cut Captain Brandt's throat, then his own. Sorry, hon. Jill shivered. I'm a nurse. I'm immune to such things. You're a liar, and I love you for it. I was on police beat 3 years ago, Jill, and I never hardened to it. What happened to the others? If we don't break the bureaucrats loose from that log, we'll never know. And I'm star-eyed newsboy. We should. Secrets beget tyranny. Ben, he might be better off if I gypped him out of his inheritance. He's very, unworldly. The exact word, I'm sure. Nor does he need money. The man from Mars will never miss a meal. Any government in 1,000-odd universities and institutions would be delighted to have him as a permanent guest. He'd better sign it over and forget it. It's not that easy, Jill. You know the famous case of General Atomics versus Larkin et al.? You mean the Larkin decision? I had it in school, same as everybody. What's it got to do with Smith? Think back. The Russians sent the first ship to the moon, it crashed. The United States and Canada combined to send one, it gets, but leaves nobody on the moon. So the United States and the Commonwealth are getting set to send a colonizing one under the sponsorship of the Federation, and Russia is mounting the same deal on their own. General Atomics deals such General Atomics steals a march by boosting one from an island leased from Ecuador, and their men are there, sitting pretty and looking smug when the Federation vessel shows up, followed by the Russian one. So General Atomics, a Swiss corporation, American-controlled, claimed the moon. The Federation couldn't brush them off and grab it. The Russians wouldn't have held still. So the High Court ruled that a corporate person, a mere legal fiction, could not own a planet. The real owners were the men who maintained occupation, Larkin and Associates. So they recognized them as a sovereign nation and took them into Federation, with melon slicing for those on the inside, and concessions to General Atomics and its daughter corporation Lunar Enterprises. This did not please anybody, and the Federation High Court was not all-powerful then, but it was for a compromise everybody could swallow. It resulted in rules for colonizing planets, all based on the Larkin decision, intended to avoid bloodshed. Worked too. World War III did not result from conflict over space travel and such, so the Larkin decision is law and applies to Smith. Jill shook her head. I don't see the connection. Think, Jill, by our laws, Smith is a sovereign nation, and the sole owner of the planet of Mars. And that's chapter 4.